for a while now, I've wanted to do a review on basically OBD2 readers. So that's like ScanGauge, UltraGauge, there's a few other ones out there as well. Just looking at all the Facebook forums and so forth, it seems like ScanGauge 3 was probably the one to go for, or maybe the UltraGauge. So this is not sponsored. I went and bought both of them. I've had the ScanGauge running in my Navara with a VK56 engine in it for the last year, and have been getting a good understanding of ScanGauge. A couple of months ago, I bought the UltraGauge, and I've been using that in the patrol. And I want to share what I've learnt about both of them, a little bit why you need them. I'm probably going to leave the actual gauge numbers, if they're good, bad, or otherwise, to a separate video, because there definitely is some differences. There is one that's better than the other, and there's also it's okay. I don't know if I'm going to say there's one that's better than another. I'm going to say that there's differences that each of them have, but I'm going to tell you which one is going to stay in my car long term. At a basic level, and so now specifically comparing the two gauges, they both do engine coolant temp, they both do battery voltage, they both do trans temps, they're very similar, they all do it, but they do displacing things differently. The ease of use is different, the size is very different. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, this is the ScanGauge 3. The basic menu set up like this. Really, I can't go into every single thing about each of these gauges because it would be a 2-hour video. So I'm going to focus on just what I think is important. We can either go on scan codes, which is easy enough. You can clear codes if it's coming up with any. Good. We're in Steve's car at the moment. There's no codes. That's good to see. But the gauge is really where it's at. This particular gauge displays 9 things on a page, and there's 3 pages to choose from. You can have less on a page if you choose, but essentially you've got 9 things to look at once. To switch between them, it's all touchscreen, which is good. Give it points for that. What it does lose points for is size. So like when you have a look at everything that's on the dash, by the time you have a safety day, maybe a throttle controller, the ScanGauge, it gets busy. And the way you set your pages up, so let's say you might have a bit of everything on one particular page. We can go to page 2, and it might be more to do with fuel ratios and all that sort of thing, and then you might have one to do with trip. But this is Steve's main screen. He's looking at coolant temp, trans temp 1 and 2, voltage. He's also looking at exhaust gas temps as well, bank 1, bank 2, oil temp, and fuel ratios. So that's what he considers important. I've got mine set up different, but that's the beauty of really all of these gauges. You can customize them to exactly what you want on each one. To navigate around, it's pretty quick. You can, when you're going to fill up for petrol, I must admit the ScanGauge is excellent for this. Basically go fill up, tell it how much what fuel you put in and what price, and it will give you stats. Yes, exit without saving. And there's some extra gauges you can put in there as well. Pretty good, pretty easy to navigate. I'm sure Steve won't mind if I give his car a bit of a squirt. Alright, I'm driving back to swap cars to my car with the UltraGauge in it. But as I'm driving back, and I'm talking about the reasons for why you need to even have some sort of a gauge. And basically, if you're 4-wheel driving, if you're towing, if you've modified your vehicle anything other than stock, if you're going out of phone reception, all of those indicators are a reason for having some sort of ScanGauge. Because I've been in, I think it was Coffin Bay, and I stumbled upon this guy with a ute stuck, went into limp mode. He was in a sand dune, the bowl of a trench of a sand dune, and he couldn't get out because it didn't have enough power to get out of the dune. We ended up having to swap one of our gauges over to his, clear the codes, just so he could drive out of the place. If we didn't stumble upon him, there was no phone reception, he was walking. So that's one of the reasons. The other one is, towing, I've got another whole video on what gear to tow in, because you can get it wrong. Recently I was in a convoy with Y62s, and we were coming back from Mount Gambier. It would have been, it wasn't necessarily a hot day, but it was a very windy day. I'm going to say like 40k an hour headwinds. So what a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll lock it into fifth and drive, look at the temperature on the dash. If it's not, getting hot, all good. But what can happen though, if you're loading up the transmission, you're creating heat in the trans, and it might not show on the temperature coolant gauge, but this particular guy ended up boiling the oil in the trans essentially. By the time he got home, it was starting to show symptoms of shuddering. By the time he drove to work on Monday, it almost lost the gear to the point where he had to get the car to us. We did trans flush, put some anti-shudder in it, and it came back to life. It's not perfect, but it's a lot better than it was. So it is possible to absolutely boil the trans oil. This makes me think, what's important to measure the trans temp in the pan or at the torque converter? Is one more important than the other? I don't know the answer. Feel free to comment below. I'm keen to hear what you say, actually. Now the last bit is you modify your car. So this one's supercharged. It's got lights on the front that can reduce cooling as well. It's just nice to see what's going on. Like my Navara, I kept wondering why I was going into limp mode. It was because it was getting hot, but it was getting hot because it was taking hot air from the engine bay. Put a snorkel on there, dropped all the intake temps right down, haven't had a problem since. So when you're modifying your car, it's good to just, able to have a look at trans temp, coolant temp, air intake temp, even ambient temperature. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to have some sort of a gauge. If I was going to pick on this gauge, it's probably a little bit bright sometimes, especially at night. I'm sure you can turn it down somewhere. But probably the two things that really get me about this one is the physical size of it. It's double the size of the Ultra Gauge. And the second one's the price. As of today, I'm recording this in March 2025, they're $445. That's a lot of coin for something that just, if you want to, you go buy a King's one for $85 and it gives you most of this data. I've jumped into my car. I was trying to put my suction cup mount somewhere where I could go for a drive and look at the gauge, but because of where it is, it's actually hard to capture, so I'm just sitting in my driveway here. But you can see real estate wise, I don't have an extra thing up here in the way because I can fit the Ultra Gauge down here, or going a bit closer. So looking at sort of my line of sight, which is probably about here, I can see my fuel gauge, I can see oil pressure, I can see everything else, I can see my speedo. It doesn't really occlude anything, but now I've got this gauge which is just ultra crisp and clear. Hopefully this comes out on camera, and it's so easy to read. I'm going to have to just hold this, so excuse me if it gets a bit wobbly, but this is essentially how you can set the gauge up. You can have it like seeing 4 things, 6 things if I've got it set now. There's 2 buttons at the back here, and there's like a master button. That's the only 3 buttons, so it's not touchscreen, but on the upside of not having touchscreen, you've just got these 3 sort of simple buttons to go between. So you can have up to, I believe, let's have a look. If we go gauge, select which gauge, select which page. I can have 7 pages, and on each screen you can have 8 gauges per screen. I've got rid of all of them. I've got just 3. I think 3 is plenty. And let's get back out of here. So we'll go up arrow, that's the navigation. And this is how I've got mine set up. So engine coolant, trans temp, it's just trans pan, it's not torque converter. I like to look at the load, because when I see the load, if I'm driving a manual, if I see the load getting up past 80%, it tells me I need to drop a gear. Otherwise, these temps are going to start going up. I like to see intake temp, and I've only got 1 cat temp on screen, and I like to look at the voltage, because essentially I can learn and see what my BCDC is doing based on what that's doing. So that's my screen, you know, for everyday use. If I'm actually, you know, full driving, towing, or doing anything with detail, I'll have a few more things on there. I don't know why it's saying 1 degree ambient temperature there, but anyway, maybe it's still working it out. Distance to empty, all the normal stuff, I suppose. However, there is one quirk with Ultra Gauge, which I'll tell you. Essentially, you have to have a screen set up for your trans temp only. So I've got the trans temp there, but these two gauges here are what trigger the trans temp. So you have to display this, you have to have the other two on the screen as well. So if I turn the car off, turn it off, is it going to turn off eventually? It's all turned off. Now turn the car on, and it'll come up with an error until I flick through those gauges. The triggers come on, and now I can see everything on. So that's my preferred format. You know, if you didn't want to do that each time, all you would do is you'd probably set up similar to what I've got page 3 here, and you just put up with those spots being used, and you'd put everything else around it, or maybe you'd go to the 8 settings so you could get more. Once you get your head around the buttons and the menus, which there is plenty of, it's pretty easy to use and navigate around. You go to your, if you want to clear codes, you can do it down the bottom. If you want to do all the fuel stuff, you can go into the fuel menu and tell it when you're filling up, zero everything out. But that's for advanced users. If you simply just want to see some data, that's where I like this gauge. It's so much smaller, it's easy to read night and day, it doesn't occlude anything, and I got to admit, like as of March 2025, I think these are $279. The price isn't going to burn too much. If you want every little thing, spend the money and get the ScanGauge 3, but I got to admit, I think this is the one that's going to stay in my car. All right, next I'm going to put up a bit of a sheet showing a comparison of, you know, all the things between the gauges. So here's the two gauges on paper, side by side. The pricing's there, but that's subject to change because time moves forward. Looking at how easy it is to set up, ScanGauge just wins. I must admit, Ultra Gauge is a little bit fiddly to customise it if you don't want it straight out of the box gauges that are shown. Ease of use, both are pretty easy, but ScanGauge is slightly easier. Clarity of the screen, this is where I think Ultra Gauge wins. It's got much better definition during the day and night. It's not over bright. And the size, it's heaps better. It's half the size of the ScanGauge, and I think that is much more appropriate to stick on the dash somewhere. As far as what you can see, you know, one shows 8 gauges, the other's 9, so there's not much there. Trans temps, so ScanGauge 3 does the pan and converter, whereas Ultra Gauge only does pan. Is the converter important? Well, I personally don't think so. That's the last bit before it goes into the cooler anyway, so yeah, I don't think so. TPMS, if you're one of these poor suckers that bought a 2024 Y62, ScanGauge is the one for you because it will show you TPMS individually. Ultra Gauge won't. Oil temp, again, Ultra Gauge won't, but you know, coolant temp somewhat follows oil temp anyway, so you know, that's on the fence about that one too. So that's the review. You would have worked out from that both gauges are excellent. Ultra Gauge is staying in my car, but if you want either of these, we're going to start stocking them in all our 4x4 DNAs, so Adelaide, Melbourne, Perth. Drop in, if you like these videos, support us, come and grab an Ultra Gauge or ScanGauge. See you next time on YouTube. Yeah.